Hi guys, and welcome back. Today I am going to be talking about some of the books that I've read lately and what's on my TBR for spring. I did do this somewhat recently. I've read a lot. In April, I read either 12 or 13 books total. That doubled the number of books that I've read this year. I've read 25 books so far as of today, May 5th. So that's a significant amount of books, and I figured I'd talk about them. For the most part, I actually don't have very many of these books because I've either gotten them from the library or read them on my Kindle. So sorry for the lack of visual, physical representation of the covers. Let's just get right into it. Some of these books I have already talked about in vlogs that I've done previously, so I won't be talking about them too much because if you watch all of my videos, I don't want you to have to hear me say the same thing multiple times. The first two books are books that I talked about in my Gothic reading vlog. They are Belladonna and Foxglove by Adalyn Grace. These are the first two books in a series. Belladonna got 5 stars and Foxglove got 4.5 stars. I'm again not going to talk about them too much. They are Gothic paranormal romances about this girl whose name I already forget, and her relationship with death, essentially. I had a fun time reading them, clearly, because I gave them 5 and 4.5 stars. I historically am not a huge fantasy girl, so the fact that I read a fantasy series, even if it is a romantasy series really, I would consider it more of a paranormal romance than a fantasy romance, but they're kind of interchangeable, honestly, because paranormal is fantasy related. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that exactly. I'll talk about it later because I read more books in a similar vein, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked these. It made me want to read more books like that. The next book that I read was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This was a reread and it's a 5-star for me all the time. I love a fake dating trope. Yes, Ali Hazelwood's books are a little silly, goofy, a little millennial cringe, but I adore them. Honestly, I think I like how Ali Hazelwood writes her male love interests. I think that's a huge part of it for me, part of the appeal for me. I'll always love Ali Hazelwood. And I did read another Ali Hazelwood book immediately after that. I read Love on the Brain, which is a 4-star for me. The ending conflict for that one is just feels off to me. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but that's why it's not a 5-star read for me. That and the Galaxy leggings. I know that's stupid. I was just oh, it's millennial cringe, but it's fine. The Galaxy leggings are something I cannot get past. That is so 2014 Tumblr. And I know that Ali Hazelwood is a fanfic girly, and these are The Love Hypothesis, at least, is absolutely Reylo fanfiction, but you work for NASA and you wear Galaxy leggings. Okay. It's not that big of a deal for me, clearly, because I keep reading it, but I think it's funny. So then I read Anatomy of Love Story by Dana Schwartz, which I gave 4 stars. I talk about that in my Gothic reading vlog as well. I enjoyed it. It was Gothic for sure. It took place in Scotland in a long time ago, the 1600s, I don't remember. And it was good. I liked it. I don't remember the storyline now. I'm really bad at remembering books a long time after I read them. So if you want to know my in-depth thoughts on Anatomy of Love Story, go watch my Gothic reading vlog because I don't remember them now. A book I already talked about in a vlog but loved and would happily talk about again is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This got 5 stars for me. It was so good. I sobbed, as you may have seen if you watched that video, and yeah, I loved it so much. You feel such a deep connection to the characters because you see them grow up, and you know what's going to happen the whole time if you know anything about Greek mythology, about the legends of Achilles. Then you know what's going to happen anyway. But it was just so good. It was so beautifully written and immersive, and you don't want to stop reading it while you're reading it, and it's just 5 stars. And then I finally finished Wisteria by Adalyn Grace, which is the 3rd book in the Belladonna series, Belladonna, Foxglove, Wisteria. I gave it 3.75 stars. It was good. It's about her cousin, Signa, I think is the main character in the first two. It's about her cousin. I don't know why I didn't connect with it as much, but I didn't love it as much. It wasn't as gripping as the first two. I don't really remember what the conflict was, but I feel like it was not really all that prevalent in the story. Like there wasn't something the driving force of the story outside of the romance. And the romance just wasn't enough for me. So I had a really hard time finishing the book, honestly. I love the way that Adeline Grace writes. I think it's very descriptive. The imagery is amazing. And I think there was a lot of potential for the romance to be really, really good, and it just didn't hit for me. But I still really loved the book, and I know there is another book coming out in that series soon, and I will be reading it. I think it's like a Christmas special story or something. I don't think it's like a full-length novel. So then I read a newer release by Ali Hazelwood. I read Deep End. I gave this 4.5 stars. So I went into it expecting it to be like super spicy, super kinky. It's not. I for some reason, everybody online was making it out to be like it was. I'm like, don't get me wrong, it's Ali Hazelwood, so there was smut in it and there was some kink in it, but it wasn't overwhelmingly like that. Maybe I've read too much fan fiction. Maybe it's a me thing, but I didn't think it was that much. I thought it was a good amount. I thought it made sense. It was like a realistic, they're starting their relationship, this is how it's going type of thing. But anyway, aside from that, it was about swimmers and divers, that is different for Ali Hazelwood. She usually writes grad students first off. These were undergrads, so they're a little bit younger, and they're athletes, not people in STEM. So it was a little different in that sense. I thought there was a good amount of character growth by our female main character, Scarlett, and I absolutely adored Luke. Every time I've seen someone talking about him on TikTok, I have left a comment talking about how much I love him, because he made the book for me. I loved him so much. I think he might be my new favorite man written by Ali Hazelwood. I have seen people online saying that they didn't like the conflict with, I forget her name, but the girl who is Scarlett's friend and kind of like Luke's ex, and it's a little bit complicated, it's a little bit messy. But like I said, they're in college, they're in undergrad. These aren't grad students mid to late 20s like Ali Hazelwood usually writes. These are people in their early 20s, and we're all messy in our early 20s. Feel free to correct me, but like, your brain's not fully developed, you don't know who you are, you're off at college for maybe the first time ever away from your parents, the first time ever with like that much independence and freedom. It can get messy, and I kind of thought it was realistic. I don't know that the people I've seen complaining about it are complaining about it not being realistic or just saying that they hated the girl. So then I read another new release in romance. I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I do have the Taylor Swift song going through my head every time I think about this book. So I gave Say You'll Remember Me 3.75 stars. 4 stars felt like too much for me, but 3.5 felt like too little. And Storygraph lets you do quarter stars, so that's what I did. I had really high hopes for Say You'll Remember Me because I loved 2 of Abby Jimenez's books. But this one didn't hit for me. I didn't connect with the story as much as I wanted, and I didn't feel like the romance was as fleshed out as it could have been. But I think part of that is because I am not a love at first sight or lust at first sight kind of girl. I don't usually like it in books. For them, I think it was more of a like connection at first sight, and they decided it was romantic, but I don't know. The way that they started being friends and then more, I didn't love, but I've seen some people having an issue with the way it ends and what their compromise ends up being, because if you don't know the premise of the story, I've just realized I haven't given synopses of any of these books, I'm so sorry. If you don't know the premise of the story, the female main character lives in or is moving to California from Minnesota, and our male main character is a vet in Minnesota, and he owns the vet clinic that he works at, which is a huge financial investment. So she is moving to California to help take care of her mother, who has dementia. So they both have these really, really good reasons for needing to be where they are physically, but their connection is so intense. They go on one date, but it lasts like 12 hours or something like that. And then she moves to California and he's in Minnesota with his vet clinic. And I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but obviously in order for the romance to work, there has to be a compromise there. The same way that we saw people talking about it for Happy Place by Emily Henry. People don't love the way that the compromise works out. But in my opinion, that's how life works out sometimes. I think a lot of people go into romance books wanting this magical, perfect love story with these perfect characters who don't do anything wrong. Nobody has to compromise on anything in their lives. That's not how life works. I appreciate the books that don't have that, and I'm not trying to like offend anyone. If you don't want that, that's okay. That's okay. You can read whatever you want. But I think it's realistic for them to have to decide what's feasible for them and where their priorities lie. And in the end, their priorities lie with each other, and one of them has to give stuff up. And that's, or just not even give stuff up necessarily, but change a big part of their lives. And I think that's how life works. You know, the next book I read was recommended to me by TikTok, I think, and I think it was just on Kindle Unlimited. But I read Ice Mechanic by Leah Bevins. I gave it 3 stars. I barely remember reading the book, to be completely honest. I remember a little bit of the plot, but not much of it. It was fine. It wasn't poorly written, wasn't super gripping, like I wasn't sucked into the book by any means. But it was short and it was an easy read, so I read it. It was just like a very middle of the road book. The next book is another one that I talked about in my last vlog, but I want to talk about it more because I have more thoughts now that it's been a little while. And that book is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, which I gave 3.5 stars. I might have to change that to 4 stars. The more I've sat with it, the more I realized I actually really liked it. Because I keep thinking about it. I don't know if you guys ever do this, but sometimes after I sit with a book for a while, I completely change my mind on how not completely, but I change my mind a little on how I feel about it. Sometimes that means I like it more than I thought, sometimes less. For The Three-Body Problem, one of my complaints was, I don't think I'm smart enough to read this. And that's true, I was confused, my brain hurt a little bit afterwards. But it was also nice to read something that made me think in a way I haven't thought in a while, I guess. I have a science degree and I have not done a job relating to that in a long time. So I'm kind of like rusty on the science side of things. And even though it's not totally a related science, although there is a whole part I cut from that video of me ranting about environmental justice because of the Three-Body Problem book. So, you know, at least I know that that knowledge is still there. I realized that I really need to get back into reading my sci-fi because I have so much sci-fi I need to read anyway. And it was nice to use my brain that way again. It's been a while, and I want to use my brain like that more often. So that was kind of nice. I finally have a physical copy of a book. Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. So this book was, I gave it 4.5 stars. It was recommended to me indirectly by my friend Kyla. She read it, I don't know when, but I feel like I've seen her post about it fairly consistently in her Instagram stories. This is the other book that I was talking about earlier when I said that I wanted to and did read other books along the same lines of Belladonna and the Belladonna series. It's in the real world, the world that we know, but it's still like a fantasy paranormal romance type of vibe. This one specifically has like devils and ghosts, and Ophelia, our main character, she can talk to the dead. So yeah, I guess the 2025 is the year that I get into fantasy paranormal romances, like for real. I had a really good time reading Phantasma, but the ending felt kind of rushed. It didn't feel like it was explained super well, like I was confused. I was on board the whole book, and then at the end, I knew part of it, but the way that the ending came about. I don't know if I just wasn't paying enough attention. I do think I was reading this at like 2 a.m. So I don't know if I just wasn't paying enough attention, but other reviewers seemed similarly confused by it, so I don't think I'm alone. It's not 5 stars because of that, it's 4.5 stars because the ending just felt rushed and weird to me. I do think also that we could have used more of the trials. I really would have liked to see those more in depth and a little more detailed. I would absolutely have read a longer book for that. I think I just wanted a little bit more, like it was well done, well written. I think I just wanted it to be, I just wanted it more, wanted more depth to the romance, which was another lust at first sight situation. So I didn't love that, but if you ignore that, then I liked it. Anyway, yeah, 4.5 stars for Phantasma. And then I read Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage, and I gave this 4 stars. I love a cowboy. I love a cowboy romance. I love a Western romance when they're done well, and Lila Sage does them well, I can say confidently. The romance was another lust at first sight thing. They like make out in a bar. That's their first interaction. And I don't usually love that, but they did end up having a deeper connection later on before they got into much else. So that redeemed it for me. It was a fun book, lovable characters. It has not been that long since I read it, and I don't remember the plot very well. So she's like an interior designer, and he owns the ranch, or his dad owns the ranch or whatever. And that's kind of the plot. I don't remember the details of the plot. You know, that's why it's 4 stars. It wasn't like super memorable for me. But then I read Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage, which is the next book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. It's like interconnected standalones. So I never read the first one, Done and Dusted, and that couple is heavily featured in both of these books because I think they're all brothers. No, they're not all brothers, but they're all like, kind of like with the Elsie Silver books, you know, they all work on the same ranch. Lost and Lassoed, however, got 4.5 stars. I think I liked the relationship in this one a lot more. I think I fell in love with it a little more. It was also, I don't know, the nanny thing. She is essentially his nanny for the summer. She's trying to figure her life out, and he needs help. He and the mother of his daughter they co-parent, but the mom is out of town for the summer. I forget what she's doing, but it's something really important to her career. And I don't even think it's the whole summer. I think it's like a month or something. The nanny thing would usually be a little weird to me because that's an off power dynamic. It's tilted towards one side because you work for somebody. But because they'd known each other for so long before this, she is friends with his little sister. They're like best friends. So because they already knew each other, it's not as weird. Like they have an established friendship. They don't like each other very much, but like there's an established relationship there. So the power dynamics aren't super weird, and it's a short-term arrangement with a clear end date. So it wasn't that weird to me. The character growth in this one is also another reason that it got 4.5 stars, where Swift and Saddled only got 4. Not that there isn't character growth in Swift and Saddled, there certainly is. I don't know, maybe I related more to Lost and Lassoed than to Swift and Saddled. I just liked it better. I don't know, it got a half star more. Keeping with the cowboy romances, the Western romances, Hopeless by Elsie Silver, which I gave 4 stars. This is another interconnected standalone series. I read most of the other books in the series before I read this one, but a while ago. I have Flawless, which is I think the first one, on my shelf. So Hopeless by Elsie Silver, they get fake engaged. And I love a fake dating, fake engagement, fake relationship, whatever. I almost didn't read this book because in the description, she says something about him being like all manly and experienced or whatever, and I'm all virgin. And a lot of the time when that's something that's in the description, it gets really annoying, and it's just like, stop talking about how you've never had sex before. Nobody cares. It's not that big of a deal. But I didn't get the ick from it in this one. The way that it was written, it wasn't a weird, like, I want to take your innocence from you type of thing, which is, I think, the biggest annoyance for me, is that, like, a lot of the times the virgin main characters are made out to be this like innocent, naive little girl, and that's like, why, that's weird, you're an adult. I don't know. But the way Elsie Silver wrote it was great. I enjoyed it. Well, I didn't enjoy that part specifically, but I enjoyed the book overall, and I didn't hate that part. It was a good book, good romance. I enjoyed it, even though I don't remember a lot of the plot. I do unfortunately remember most of the plot for Drive Me Home by Carly Robin, which is another one that is just like a Kindle Unlimited book that was, I felt like, more about the smut than anything else. It was my first foray into race car driving romance, because I didn't know that was a thing. I'm not into F1 or NASCAR in real life, but I think this was another one that I saw recommended to me on TikTok. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. My favorite part was absolutely the relationships. The author did a really good job writing the relationships, not only between our 2 main characters in their romantic relationship, but also between the other characters. And like our main character's brother is a big part of this book because it's like a brother's best friend romance. The conflict that happens was like kind of to me, and I enjoyed it, but I just nothing about it stood out negatively or positively, so middle of the road with a 3 stars. Then I read the sequel to Phantasma, Enchantra. So like honestly, huge shout out to Kyla for giving me 2 4.5 star books to read in the last couple months. I don't think she watches my videos, but Kyla, if you do watch my videos, thank you. But I did give Enchantra another 4.5 stars. I think I liked it a little better, to be completely honest. I think I liked our main character a little better. That's definitely a huge part of it, our female main character. I loved Rowan and Genevieve. Genevieve's kind of like, she's trying to prove something for sure, and she's trying to answer some questions about her mother's life. Both books are definitely like, there's this mystery surrounding their mom that nobody seems to know anything about, and we still don't much at the end of Enchantra. So I'm hoping in the next book, or books, I'm not sure how many there will be, I'm hoping we will get more answers because I will be buying them. We got a lot more of the trials in this one because it is another like trials competition thing, and I really liked that. They are fake married, not really, I mean they do have to really get married, they have to do a ceremony, but they're fake engaged to fake married. So there's that fake relationship trope that I seem to love so much. I do wish that the romance had a little bit more depth, but this one I feel like had more than Phantasma. I loved the characters and I enjoyed the storyline. I'm just really hoping that we get some answers in the next book. But that's what a series is about. These aren't interconnected standalones, these are a series. So I have to wait to get answers, and that just came out, so I'm not going to get answers for a long time. Great. The next book, I've read a lot of new releases lately, and I'm pretty proud of myself for that. I read Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I stayed up until 2 a.m. reading it. My friend Heather stayed up until far past her bedtime reading it as well, a few days before I did. So clearly not everybody hates this book. However, I feel like a lot of the discourse I've seen on TikTok has been people saying it's not a romance. And it's a romance. It's a romance. It is more literary women's fiction than any of her other books have been, for sure. And I liked that. I get why not everybody would like that, but it doesn't make it not a romance. The romance is still the main point of the book. You're not reading the book to find out what happens to Margaret. You're reading the book to find out what happens to Hayden and Alice and their relationship. I still think it's a romance. I did enjoy Margaret's story though. It felt very, and I think Emily Henry did this on purpose. I know she said it was based on The Last Great American Dynasty by Taylor Swift, but I believe both of them based their stories a little bit on the Kennedys. So the Kennedys are cursed. It's like a whole thing. Obviously, we all know JFK, but there were other tragedies that have happened in their family. So the Kennedy curse is like a thing. And there's a point where Margaret says that her family, or Alice says that Margaret's family is cursed, and Margaret goes, no, our family is the curse. I thought that stood out to me. And that was the moment that I was like, yeah, this is based on the Kennedys for sure. Because the male main character's name is Hayden, and Star Wars Episode 3 turned like 15 or 20 or whatever this year, I was picturing Hayden Christensen the whole time. I don't remember the physical description of Hayden in the book. I think he's like a tall brunette, so that kind of works. But I was thinking Hayden Christensen the whole time. I was just picturing Anakin Skywalker. The final book that I read lately is Whirlwind by Kayla Gross. I gave it 2.5 stars. There wasn't much of a plot. It was really, I think she wrote it for the smut. It's Twisters adjacent in that they're storm chasers, which is why I read it. I loved Twisters, and I wish they had done the scene where they kissed at the end. They filmed it and everything and then decided not to use it. But in this one, he is her professor. She's a grad student, I think. And he's like 40 something and she's in her 20s. That's a big difference. So the age gap and the power dynamic, didn't love. The writing was okay though. I didn't hate the writing, clearly, because I didn't DNF it. But it really was just like mostly about the sex, and I like a deeper relationship and a deeper storyline than that these days. I don't think it was a bad book, but I wouldn't read it again, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you want to read Twisters adjacent smut. The power dynamic is like kind of resolved by the end, I guess, but I did almost DNF it because he is her professor. It's just, I don't know, it was a little icky. 2.5 stars. It was fine. And now we are gonna get into my TBR for the next couple of months. I don't remember what I put on my TBR last time I did one of these videos, so I'm sorry that I am not going over whether or not I read any of those, but I'm pretty sure Great Big Beautiful Life at the very least was on there, so I did one of them. Deep End was probably on there as well. But the books that I am hoping to get to soon are Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, which is like gonna be scary to read. When the global climate change and economic crises lead to social chaos in the early 2020s, California becomes full of dangers, from pervasive water shortage to masses of vagabonds who will do anything to live to see another day. 15-year-old Lauren Olamina lives inside a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors, sheltered from the surrounding anarchy. In a society where any vulnerability is a risk, she suffers from hyperempathy, a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. Precocious and clear-eyed, Lauren must make her voice heard in order to protect her loved ones from the imminent disasters her small community stubbornly ignores. But what begins as a fight for survival soon leads to something much more: the birth of a new faith and a startling vision of human destiny. So it's about economic and environmental crises. I know nothing about that. A lighter book that will not be scary to read, First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, which I have been meaning to start for a month and I just haven't read yet. This is about Aiden, who has fallen out of love with love, but is the host of Baltimore's Romance Hotline, so it's kind of his job. Love is his job. And then Lucy Stone thought she was doing fine. She has a job, a family, and an amazing kid, but her kid calls in to Aiden's show asking for dating advice for her mom. But then Lucy and Aiden start kind of like working together. I think she goes on his show, and I'm gonna assume they fall in love. There's more to it than that, but it gives me Sleepless in Seattle vibes, which is a great movie and I may have to rewatch soon. Another book that I am hoping to read soon is The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer is an Indigenous scientist, and in this book she is considering the ethic of reciprocity that lies at the heart of the gift economy, and how we can learn from Indigenous wisdom and the plant world to reimagine what we value most. I'm excited to read it. The last physical book that I want to read is Blue Sisters by Coco Malore. This has also been on my TBR for a while. I also think this one's going to devastate me. It is about 3 estranged sisters who return to their family home in New York after their beloved 4th sister's death in this unforgettable story of grief, hope, and complexities of family from the acclaimed author of Cleopatra and Frankenstein. So then I have 3 books that I don't have the descriptions of because I just wrote them down. I am waiting on them to come in from the library. So I have All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. I have seen so many people recommend this series, so I decided I wanted to start it. I think it's a sci-fi. And then Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage, which is the next book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I think it's self-explanatory why I want to read that one, because I left the other two. And then finally, The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. I follow India Holton on Instagram, and she just does a good job making you want to read her books. And it sounds interesting. I don't remember what it's about, but I've had it on hold at the library for like a month, and it still says several months wait. But then I went and I looked physically at the library and I was like, oh, it says it's on the shelf at the library. So I put it on hold and we'll hopefully be going to pick it up in just a couple of days. That is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I rambled a lot. I think I've been filming for an hour. Let me know what you thought of any of the books that I've read, any of the books on my TBR. What's on your TBR for spring? What have you read lately? What is the last really great book that you read? Let me know in the comments, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Love you, bye.